Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Alan Saunders. That's Nick Farabaugh. We're here talking every Tuesday and Thursday, at least for the next couple months, about the 2023 NFL Draft and really the whole rest of the offseason as it builds up to the draft. We were at the Senior Bowl. We'll be at the Combine in a week. A week from today, we'll be talking to Omar Khan at the Combine. We'll also deal with free agency and all the rest of the NFL offseason as it impacts what the Steelers are going to do in the draft at the end of April. Nick, today is the first day for NFL teams to tag players with the franchise or transition tags. There's obviously a lot of talk league-wide about what the Baltimore Ravens are going to do with Lamar Jackson. Not a lot of talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, mostly because I don't think they have very many players that are even realistic candidates for those tags. But I figured this would be a good time to, well, let's get through that first part of it, and then also just sort of talk about why teams tag players and where the Steelers are in situations where they might want to really want to get something done before the start of free agency. So I mean, let's just start with the franchise tag. I don't see there being a franchise tag player of the Steelers that are hitting free agency. The Steelers have three full-time starters, and then Robert Spillane and Devin Bush, which kind of shared one spot at inside linebacker. So 5 guys that are starter caliber players that are hitting free agency. None of them, to me, are franchise tag guys, but I think the transition tag might be theoretically plausible for maybe 1 or 2 of them. What do you think about that group and the idea of tagging one of them?
I don't see it happening. None of them are good enough. There's a few that are really good and will command a lot of money, but tag a good, no. The tag figures did come out yesterday, and so the only guy I would consider tagging is Cam Sutton. Just because I feel like he's going to get a lot of money, but that's an $18.14 million tag, and he's not worth that much.
Now the
He's
transition tag for a corner is 15.7, and I still think
That's too much.
like I think Cam Sutton would sign a contract at 15 million a season before they wouldn't need to tag him to get him for that. That's my feeling about his value, which I think I've seen projected more in the lower 8 figures, 10, 11, somewhere in there.
Yeah, well, Shavarius Ward got 13.5 last year. So Cam
Okay.
Sutton's is about as good, if not better, than Shavarius Ward to me. They're similar players. They're not true number ones, but they're pretty high end twos that are versatile. So is it going to be more than him, or will Sutton take less? I think that's the question. Either way, I just don't think these guys are worth tagging.
Well, so there's 2 reasons you tag a player, right? One is that the player is just worth the amount, so it makes sense. The other is you're just so screwed if they leave that you're willing to overpay, right? Like now the Steelers are losing multiple bodies at defensive tackle, multiple bodies at linebacker, probably multiple bodies at corner. Do you see it making sense, even if the dollars figure doesn't make sense, that the Steelers need at one of these positions is just so great that they have to do something preemptive at one of those spots?
yeah, right. Like, here's the perfect tag situation. Next year with Alex Highsmith, that's where you tag a guy, right? Who's a really good player, but maybe you don't have the long term cap room to get him signed that year. The Steelers have long term cap room to sign Cam Sutton. They don't have short term, but they have long term. And so I feel like tagging him to kind of make him take up 18, 15 million on the cap this year is a very tough stretch. So it's just tough to me to see them tagging anybody. And then anyone else just isn't worth it, right? Like Edmonds isn't worth it. Ogunjobi isn't worth it. So there's just no one worth it. And so the tag is used for elite players that you can't get under contract, right? And Steelers fans have been through this. Lev Bell, Bud Dupree. It makes sense, but this is not a situation where it kind of meets the criteria to me. So they're not going to tag anybody. It's all going to be about, can you get these contracts done, and can you kind of reach deals with them? I think that's the only way that these guys end up coming back to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and I think the tag is probably unlikely, but I do think several of these guys the Steelers are going to reach out to before the start of the free agency and try to get something done. It would be really surprising to me if they wait until free agency to address these four guys. I mean, I think this is I think not really Bush, maybe so much, but I think like the Steelers would really like Ogunjobi, Spillane, Edmonds, and Sutton all back, and I think they'd be willing to make offers before the start of free agency on long-term contracts to get them all back. Now the question then becomes whether or not they can make the money work.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, right? Combine's next week. The agents are going to be there. I expect the Steelers to sit down with some of their agents next week, and try and hash some things out here. Sutton seems like the one to me that if I were the Steelers, I would want to get done first. I don't know what Cam Sutton's going to get on the market. I just talked about Shavarius Ward getting 13.5 million last year. Is there going to be a team that's desperate enough for a corner that's going to offer him 15, 16? Steelers aren't going to get that. I don't think the Steelers would match it. And then he's gone. And then what do you do, right? Now, to me, I would try to keep Cam Sutton around. He's just such a good mentor. He's one of the smartest players. He's a homegrown talent. He's the type of guy you want to keep around. But also, I personally wouldn't mind seeing Demonte Casey in this group to be signed before free agency. And why it gives me insurance if that Terrell Edmonds deal isn't going to go through, because I know I have another starting level player there. If I have KZ, I certainly think Spillane makes a lot of sense to get done early too. He feels like one of those guys that maybe you don't value as a starting level player, but there's not enough linebackers in the league to where he's good enough to where he can jack up the price to a 5-6 mil a year type deal and get a little overpaid. And if that happens, he's gone.
I
So,
also think
like,
he's a player that the Steelers will value more than most teams. And so I
yeah,
think that getting him done beforehand makes a lot of sense.
it
Larry
does.
Ogunjobi is a really interesting one to me because if you look at his contract that he signed with the Bears last year, he was going to get paid a whole lot. And then he comes to Pittsburgh, the fails the physical, comes to Pittsburgh, signs for 8 million, and kind of had this injury plagued season. Like, what is Larry Ogunjobi worth? Is he worth what he was worth at the beginning of last year? Is he worth what he was worth when the Steelers signed him last year? Is it somewhere in between? I think there's a lot of question marks there. If they could get something, if they can exchange some long-term security for a cheap deal, and again, like you said, the Steelers have a cap crunch in 2023, but not necessarily a long-term one. They can push some money into the future. One-year deals for them are actually far harder to digest than say, okay, Larry, we'll give you 3 years at 10 million and let's see what happens, because they can push more of that money into the future in that case.
Exactly. And I think that's what they're going to do. I think we're going to see multi-year deals. I don't expect to see them do void years. I don't think that they're really incentivized to do that. They did that on the back end of Ben Roethlisberger's deal, but that was his last hurrah, right? So it made sense for them to do that. It doesn't really make sense for them to do it now. So to me, multi-year deals, 2+ year deals. And so where does Ogunjobi come in? I don't know. I think he's a very weird player to kind of mesh, right? Got a huge contract from the Bears last year. Got 8 million from the Steelers, but was hurt and didn't really end up playing all that well because he was hurt. But there's a good player in there. I think we can both agree with that there's a good player there. And so how much do you value that? To me, that's like a $5 million guy. Like, I don't see him getting a huge bag. He hasn't proven it enough for the past year and a half. And it's a what have you done for me now business.
The other thing you have to look at here that obviously plays into this factor is, what are the available options on the market, right? I mean, I think when you look at safety, not only do the Steelers have two of their own pretty good options at safety in Edmonds or KZ that they could, pick one or the other or play against one another to see who comes back, but it's also a really, really, really strong free agent class at safety league wide. There are 5 or 6 guys that they could go out and get and just sort of plug in at safety if they don't end up signing one of their own. Obviously, Jesse Bates is out there. That's sort of the big one, but I mean, there's a number of guys that are possible at that position. I'm not sure that I can say the same thing about linebacker, right? Like linebacker feels like it's not as deep of a class as it is at safety. Where do you see the market influencing the Steelers' decisions with these guys?
Well, I could see if Sutton doesn't come back, them go after a corner. I said this. There's enough corners, man, in this group.
Yeah, there are
There's
some corners, man.
Jonathan Jones. pivot to a vet. What about a James Bradbury coming over?
Marcus
Jim,
Peters.
yeah, Marcus Peters. We heard that be a thing. Rocky Sin, Byron Murphy. Um, I mean, Jamel Dean is out there. There's a lot of good corners out on the open market this year. Emmanuel Mosley from San Francisco is a Steelers guy, man. He feels like one. He's 27. He's not going to command that much, 6, 7 a year, and he'll give you quality play day in and day out. And there's just a lot of guys here that just make
Eli
a lot
Apple,
of
I mean,
sense.
like a common whipping boy, but like certainly a starting
Mm-hmm.
corner and one that probably wouldn't break the bank either. I agree that I think corner, interestingly enough, I think Cam Sutton is the best player of those guys that we've mentioned, but I think corner between the free agent class and an extremely deep draft class is probably the place where the Steelers could most easily replace their departing free agent. I think it's a lot easier for them to find a Cam Sutton than it is to find a linebacker or a defensive tackle to fill those voids.
Yeah. The thing is, though, that it is strong enough. I think Dean and Bradbury are going to be 1 and 2 at the top of this class, and then Sutton's in 3, 4, 5 area, right? So you get Sutton done before Dean's deal hits the market, or Bradbury's new deal hits the market as a vet. I feel like you could get him cheaper potentially, which is another incentive to get it done before the free agency period. Maybe what you do with Cam Sutton is maybe it's like 2 year or 3 year, like 12 a year, but you just jack the guarantees up for year 1 and 2. And that's something that they've been willing to do recently. I think he's good enough to where you could do that. But as you said, they could replace Cam Sutton if they wanted to. Ideally, I think they'd want him back, but they need to. I mean, even if he comes back, they're drafting a corner. Like they're drafting a corner if he comes back too. And if he leaves, they're signing and drafting one. So corner's going to be a double pronged kind of approach this offseason. Just because Cam Sutton comes back doesn't mean they're not going to draft a corner. Because
Right.
they
Well, I
will.
mean, they're going to lose, probably going to cut William Jackson. It seems likely that they'll cut Ahkello Witherspoon, both for cap reasons. And, like Levi Wallace and Art Millette are both for entering the final year of their contract. So it's a position where they need bodies. You can say the same thing about linebacker and defensive tackle. I think no matter what they do in free agency, except maybe if it's like sign Javon Hargrave or sign Tremaine Edmonds, like unless they do something like that, no matter what they do in free agency, I can see them going back to those positions even early in the draft because they need a number of bodies, right? They have 3 linebackers scheduled to hit free agency, 3 defensive linemen, all tackles set to hit free agency. They have multiple needs at those positions.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to sign someone at all 3 levels this year. Whether it's their own guys or someone else, it's going to happen. They're probably going to sign 5 free agents on the defensive side of the football. I would bet that. Not all of them are going to be glamorous. Some of them are going to be 1 year vet men, 1 year, 2 mil. That's not going to be much, but they're going to sign a lot of guys because they just need guys. Like they just need bodies. Linebacker though, like the free agency class is better than the actual draft class. Like, which makes me think they would sign Robert Spillane. And you look at some other guys like I don't know, David Long from Tennessee, good player. T.J. Edwards, Kazir White coming from WVU back, kind of this homecoming, if you will. Kazir White would make a lot of sense to me actually for Steelers, as long as you're keeping Miles Jack. You can even go and snatch a guy that you played in the division a lot. We've seen Mike Tomlin like to get guys from the division because they're familiar with them. What about Jermaine Pratt? Like there are guys at that position that you can get. D tackle and D line, it's just thin on both ends this year. That to me is a multi-year project, which actually to me heightens the need to bring back Larry Ogunjobi because I just think that there's just not a lot of good options that are better than Larry O. And so, you know, I don't think he's going to be a particularly expensive option, and he might be a guy that kind of waits out to see what his market is and then ends up coming back. But I think they'll prioritize Larry Ogunjobi a little bit more than a lot of people are thinking.
I think so too. So I think we're in agreement that none of these guys are particularly likely to be tagged, and the Steelers are going to sit out that process for, I guess that will be the 3rd consecutive year. We've talked a lot about the defense. Is there a spot on offense you think they absolutely will get addressed before free agency? I mean, other than they just Zach Gentry and Steven Sims are really there's kind of two guys that stand out. Derek Watt, I guess, is the third, right? That are possibilities on that side of the ball.
No, I don't think so. I think that's a draft and a free agency deal. A lot of it's going to be who hits the market at certain positions. Like the receiver class for the free agency class is really bad. Like it's Juju. All respect to Juju. Like I like Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a solid player. He's probably like the second best receiver in this group. That's not good. This is a bad
It might be the
receiver
best.
class.
I don't know that he's second to who? Mecole Hardman, Alan Lazard.
I mean, yeah, man, it is bad.
It's
Um,
bad. It's really
but
really
and the draft class lacks the top end. I mean, I'd say Jacoby Myers is up there as a real defendable
bad. Okay.
guy,
Yeah.
but like he's going to get a bag because he's the only guy that is there. Like Jacoby Myers is going to get a Christian Kirk-esque deal, and everyone's going to be like, "Ooh, what in the world?" But he's the only receiver that's going to be dependable.
The
So
Giants spent all year like, oh God, they just need a receiver. They just need a receiver. Two of the Giants receivers are among the best free agents. Like it's like Slayton and Richie James are up there in the free agent
yeah,
list. And they're the guys that the Giants have been just freaking out trying to do better than.
yeah.
So
I mean,
it's
it's all
really
going to be like for receiver, dude. Like it's going to be about does someone get released? It hits the market that the Steelers would be interested in. I think Michael Thomas is probably going to hit the open market. That's pretty clearly the direction. He's got like a $54 million cap hit next year. It's just not going to happen. We've heard Keenan Allen rumors about him hitting the open market and getting cut. Like if that happens, okay, maybe we get some mid-level cuts too out here that can strengthen that, but that's not coming before free agency. So I look at what the landscape is right now, and I say that's a free agency to draft area. And there's nowhere else that they have to address like quickly. Like
yeah,
right, like
I
they
agree.
don't
I think
need
it's all if we're talking about things that are going to happen between now and the start of free agency, to me it's all on defense.
yeah, it's all on defense. Building that defense up
I mean, they
is
could.
the
I guess they could sign Zach Gentry just because, like, he's a guy they like. He likes to be here. Whatever. It's you know.
yeah, they
But
could do that.
I think the focus will be on defense if and trying to get something done between now and then. Anything
Yeah,
else you want to cover here as we talk on the first day of franchise tag NFL season?
yeah,
What
man.
what about how let's just dig into Lamar Jackson for a minute here. What are the Ravens going to do? I mean, the exclusive franchise tag for a quarterback, 43 million. Can they do that? Do they need to work out a deal? How does this work for the Ravens?
I mean, they should work out a deal with them. That's pretty obvious to me. Letting him walk would be dumb. But maybe they want to see him with a passing oriented coordinator first. Because Greg Roman was all run first. Now Todd Monken comes in. He's a guy that can give you a little bit of spice in everything. Yeah,
I
they
thought
can.
that was a very good hire for the
I
Ravens.
love the hire. I
Uh,
love the hire.
and Todd Monken from University of Georgia obviously had a team in the national championship game, but I thought just beyond that had a really diverse offense that I thought made a lot of sense at the next level. It wasn't like a gimmicky college offense.
Yeah, it's well, he was an NFL guy that has been there before, so it made sense. I just think Lamar is a franchise quarterback, so you got to keep that guy. He's not one of these like mid-level guys. Like we see the Daniel Jones figures apparently being like 45 a year. Like okay, he can walk, whatever. But like there's going to be a time when a quarterback crash happens. And what I mean by this is these contracts keep getting more and more absurd. And at some point, there's going to be a team that is going to say, we're not paying you that. And we're going to test the market. One of these marquee quarterbacks is going to hit the market. Is that going to be Lamar? I think the Ravens would be very dumb to let Lamar go. And I think 43 million for him is quite honestly probably a modest price for what he's going to be asking for. So yeah, I would franchise tag him. Keep him around. Period. Like you have to keep him around at least 1 year. At least give yourself time. Like don't let him hit free agency. That would be the worst thing you could do.
Would you give him the non-exclusive tag, and do you think some team would offer more than that and pay 2 first-round picks from Lamar Jackson?
Well, you give him the non-exclusive and you can match. So, like that to me could be an option for the Ravens. They're like, okay, well, our bidding hasn't done well, so why don't you go find a deal with another team and then we'll see if we know a match. That could be something, and you would get a guaranteed 2 first. And I think a team would hop all over that. He's worth that. Like he is good enough. I just don't see the Ravens letting him walk. I don't. To me, that would just be like, okay, our sides haven't really come together. Then go out and see what your market is, and come back to us when you have a deal. And if you don't have a deal, we have you on a
That gets
1 year
them
deal.
for 32 million, I think, if they go
Yeah.
non-exclusive. I think
So
to
like,
me
okay,
that's a lot more reasonable than the exclusive tag. And I'm with you. I don't think there's really a big downside to the Ravens for doing that because hey, if somebody else works out a deal that Lamar Jackson wants, then great, take it. As long as it's not, see, to me, I think the big sticking point will be if some team gives him an absurd amount of guaranteed money. I do worry with his playing style about guaranteeing money, not this year, next year, the following year, but like 5, 6, 7 years into the future. I think that starts to get a little bit dangerous.
yeah, it does. Well, the Sean Watson deal set a precedent now that all these quarterbacks are going to want fully guaranteed
Well,
deals.
did it set a precedent or are the Browns just stupid because it's 50-50?
Well, they're
It's not a
stupid.
precedent until somebody else does it too.
Well, remember when the Jaguars gave Christian Kirk $18 million, and then the wide receiver market went crazy,
Well, but
and that's
right,
what
but Christian
happens.
Kirk, right? The rest of the league said, you know what, this isn't stupid. We're right there with you. Christian Kirk's contract was right in the line with the rest of the deals that were given out. We'll see if that's what happens with Watson or not.
We'll see, but a lot of these quarterbacks upcoming aren't going to take anything less, and that's going to be what the sticking point is here. You can only franchise tag the quarterback for so long, and I wonder when I talked about this. This is why I said one of these teams is going to say, you know what, hit the market. We kept you around on the French. They're going to Kirk Cousins somebody. I don't know who it's going to be, but one of these quarterbacks is not going to get re-signed, and I truly believe that there's going to be a marquee quarterback out on the free agency market just because someone's going to be like, you know what? Everyone else is giving these quarterbacks these crazy deals. And what have they got yet to show for it? Patrick Mahomes has something to show for it, but no one else does. So, okay, we're going to let you walk. It's not a good idea to me to let them walk, but you can't. And then there's like the mid-level quarterbacks. You can't pay Daniel Jones $45 million a year. I'm sorry, you just can't.
I
Like
mean,
they're
you can get it. Like if you got to do the franchise tag to get him through 1 year, I guess you can do it. But like you can't pay him that on a long-term
this
contract.
is this is going to end up what the quarterback contracts are going like is when you are in the NBA and you're giving the third best player on the team a max level, right? Like you're giving him a max contract. Well, then you're going over the luxury tax. The issue is there is no luxury tax in the NFL. If you don't meet the salary cap, you're not like you have to meet the salary cap, right? That is
Right.
a requirement.
I mean,
So
you can like fudge it and push money into the future, but at
yeah,
some point you have to get under the number.
so like you can't just be like giving all this money like you can in the NBA or the MLB. You have to have a concentrated effort on it. And so to me, I look at that and I say, there's going to be a quarterback kind of, there's going to be a intervention in the quarterback market soon. And I don't know who the test is going to be. I think the Ravens would be quite dumb to let it be Lamar, but it's not out of the question that it's Lamar.
We shall see, and obviously that move will have big impacts on the Steelers season. Nick, we're coming back on Thursday. I don't know what we don't have a topic in mind, so if you guys got something you want us to talk about on Thursday, hit us in the comments here on YouTube. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to Pittsburgh Sports Live, or you can find us on Twitter. I'm at _PGH, and he's at Farabaugh FB for his Steelers stuff, and obviously we've got other stuff going on as well. All the stuff at SteelersNow.com every day leading up to draft day and USFL draft today. We got urinal talk on there. We've got all kinds of stuff. So make sure to check that out and go read the lead to my urinal story. Just the first sentence. It's the best thing I wrote in like at least 2 months.
It's fantastic. Fantastic. You have to read it. You have to check it out.
For Nick Farabaugh, I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks for watching Draft Talk on Pittsburgh Sports Live. We'll see you next time.